Everyone, this is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy. Be sure to check out our blog and our YouTube channel and our newsletter and our great sponsors, Italy Rooting, Phil Italy, and Abitativa Casa. And my great guest today is Maureen Taylor, the photo detective. So welcome, Maureen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on, Bob.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. I was really excited, looking forward to this. So, I was going through the blog and the podcast and everything, and you cover such a wide variety of topics. I'm stuck with where to start.
Well, they're all photo related, though.
Yes, I know. And
photos cover a lot of territory.
Well, just so you know, my dad was a photographer for the New York Daily News for 38 years.
I think you sent me some of those. They're gorgeous photographs.
Yeah, and you know what it is? Everybody has a camera on their phone now, and they're snapping pictures of everything, and you can play with it and change the colors and all to do that. But those guys, from my dad's era, I mean, he was using a speed graphic with two plates and flash bulbs.
Yeah.
And doing, these fires and police actions. And
it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, you had to really plan the shot. You had to think it through before you press that shutter.
Yeah, exactly. And he would have two shots.
Two shots.
Because he had, had a plate, I guess the plate was like 5x7 or something like that. And carrying around this big camera bag and all of that. So
it was heavy.
Yes. I couldn't pick it up as a kid.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about how you got started as being a photo detective and looking back at these old photos and figuring out the era and the clothes and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I've been a history geek from way back. I can remember giving my mom a really hard time. I had to be Mrs. Lincoln for a school play. And I was like, I need a hoop. And she's like, what are you talking about? But with the photo stuff, I do credit her because her family had a lot of family photographs. We used to look at them all the time. We'd talk about the people in them. We talk about the photographs. And these aren't old pictures. We didn't have old pictures. We had snapshots, from the 1920s and 1930s that we'd look at and reminisce about the people in them. But then, this history and photography thing, I mean, I did not know when I was a kid or even as a young adult that you could combine those two into a career. And I had a job as a curator of a sort of non-print materials collection. And that's everything from Valentines to architectural drawings to photographs. And the photographs just were always my passion. I love basic paper ephemera. I still collect some of it, but the photographs, the stories they tell, the people that are in them, the people that aren't in them, why are they not in them? What are they wearing? What are they doing? All of that, it becomes so wonderful to tell the story.
Well, yeah, and it's it's a look into the past for sure, and that, and like I said, nowadays people ask me what should I do when I start, and I tell them, boy, ask grandma, and now put her on tape, film her story. You don't just have to
get
talk
her
to
on
her
your
about
phone.
it. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I've said this before. When sometimes they'll do it on television, or somebody will ask, if you could go back in time, who would you talk to? I said, oh, my grandmothers. Who else would I talk to?
Right. I only knew one of my grandmothers, one of my grandparents. My dad's mom is the only one who was alive when I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
I'm the oldest daughter of the youngest daughter, the youngest kid in my mom's side of the family. And then my dad got married sort of later in life, and not later in life, he was in his 30s. and his siblings were all married with kids. So, my grandparents were born in the 19th century. And by the time I came along, there was only that one grandma,
Well, and
and everybody
that's the
else is
same.
gone.
Yeah, that's the same in my family. My father was the youngest, my mother was the next the youngest. And same thing, they were born in the, 1883, 1880,
Exactly.
like that. And so I never knew my father's dad. He passed away when I was like 2 months old. But my other grandparents I kind of knew. But again, I was like, 10 or 12 or something like that when they
I
passed
would
away.
I would love to go back and talk to both of my grandparents, my grandfather on my mom's side. I would love to hear him because he was a Canadian immigrant. What did he sound like? I don't know what he sounded like, but I don't even know if he spoke English. Uh, and my grandmother and my grandparents on the other side, but I did have one link to them, and that is, I mean, she's my cousin too, but we always call her my dad's cousin. Her mother was my grandmother's sister, and her mother got married in her 40s and had children. And so this woman is still alive, and so I can sort of skip a generation when I talk to her. She has like a whole new perspective because my great grandfather is her grandfather. Not that she knew him, but all the stories came down through her. So that's the closest I can get to time travel, is
So,
talking to Jeanette.
well, the photos are actually, that's a form of time travel, right?
Right. And she gave me all of her family photographs not that long ago, which is wonderful. So I have that whole side of the family that I didn't have pictures of.
So when you find a photo from, the 1880s, 1890s, early 1900s or stuff like that, um, what grabs you in that photo, when you first look at it?
Okay. So I've been looking at photographs for a long time. We won't talk about how long. So, what grabs me in a photograph is the unusual thing that I might not see in another photo, because a lot of photos are similar. They wear similar dresses or they pose similarly or the format is similar. But what are they doing with their hands, or what little piece of jewelry are they wearing, or what's in the background? There's always something that grabs me that for me is the doorway into the story.
Yeah, yeah, I could, as you're saying that, I'm kind of envisioning it, because, uh, yeah, there may be a mirror or a picture hanging on the wall, or
Something. Or
yeah,
where was it taken? Right? Suddenly it's like, where was that taken? And my clients often don't see those little details. They're so used to just focusing on the faces and in their minds hearing the stories about the person in the photograph that they overlook it and they'll go, she's wearing a necklace? Like, yes, let's talk about the necklace. And that's why I cover such a wide range of topics on the podcast, because it's about all the different little things that play into identifying a photograph or telling the story of a photograph. But also, I love history. And so I include some general history things too, because you never know where that intersection is between the photograph, your family history, and just history in general.
yeah, and and history was my best subject, growing up. English and math, forget it. Phew, algebra, oh my God.
Let's not
Um,
talk about math.
yeah, right. I didn't know, yeah, it wasn't going to be on the test. Um, but yeah, so I always loved history, and I think that's what got me started. And I always used to like looking at the photo book with the black pages and the little corners and all of that kind of stuff, and looking at the old photos. And then I have two roadblock photos. Um, one of them is an Italian soldier. He's probably, I have to guess, just pre-World War One. And my mother used to tell me that he was my grandmother's brother.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a name on the back, Paolo Tornatone, and that's not in my family tree. And I've done extensive work on that. However, on one of the records from Italy, I see that last name. So I've, I'm stumped. I'm just stumped. The
Well,
other, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, you should have sent that to me.
I will.
But uh, sometimes the stories get confused, right? They get passed on. It's like that game of telephone that probably you and I played when we were kids, where you say one thing and you go around the circle, and by the time you come out, it's something else. But maybe that person was actually serving in the same unit with the brother, and it got confused in the family. He's in uniform, he must be so and so, but there's a name on the back that's not so and so, or he's a distant cousin or something like that. I mean, obviously, it's not, or you think it's not. I mean, is the name on the back correct? We don't know that either, but there's lots of possibilities for that photograph.
Well, like I said, and the only clue I have, because of my paternal grandmother, because of her nobility connections, I see that name, like I said, as a witness on not Paulo, probably his father or brother or something like that, but I do say the name. The other one that's a mystery is a photo of a woman that I believe is my great grandfather's sister. They came to America 10 years before my grandparents. And she's there with two little kids. And at first I thought one of the kids was my grandmother, but that's not the case. But there's no name on the back or anything like that. So I don't know if these two little girls are her grandchildren, possibly. Maybe
Possible.
nieces or something like that. And the photo was I well, see, I don't know if the photo was in Italy or in America. That's the other thing.
That's the other thing. You have to date it to figure out where they were at the time.
Yeah. So, um, but I do have a couple of photographs of my grandmother from Italy, which, based on the clothes and uh, her her face is very young in the picture. I could kind of put like she was probably 17, 18 or something like that when these photos were taken. Uh,
So yeah, did they live in the city or did they live in the rural areas?
Well, my grandmother was born outside of Naples in a place called Cercola, but her family, her grandfather, lived in Naples. Her mother was born and died in Naples in the city. And the one photo that I have of her does have the name of the photographer, and it says Napoli on it. So I know it was taken in Naples at the
So the
time.
thing about what people are wearing, right, is, and I've seen this before with photographs from Italy. If they're in the rural areas, then they might not be wearing the most up-to-date clothing. But if they're living in the city, then they might be, because they're more exposed to current fashion. So the date of an image can be a little wiggly unless you know exactly who's in the picture and you can estimate how old they are. But costume is so fascinating, which is why I have so many fashion historians on, and sometimes they disagree.
Really?
I should do a panel.
So they may look at a dress and one will say, well, it's 1880, and the other one will say, no, that's
Oh, not
1900.
quite that. It's all the little nuances of the photograph that the costume that they might disagree about. There are things. There are fashion myths, just like there are photo myths. And
Really?
yeah, there are photo myths. Sure are.
Give me an example.
Oh, well, it's reported that everyone in the Civil American Civil War had their photograph taken. Is that
Well,
really true? It seems like a bit of an exaggeration.
yeah.
Or why did people smile in photographs or not smile in photographs? That's a big one, right? I was just interviewing a photo historian just a couple of days ago for the podcast. We were talking about that very topic. And
Didn't they take pictures of the dead?
of course they did. Yeah, sure. If you didn't get them alive, you got them while they were dead. If you didn't have a picture, but the smiling thing is, God, I mean, ask every person and they'll have a different answer. They'll be like, "Oh, they're dead," or they had bad teeth, or what was the other one? Oh, anyway, we talked about it and we agreed, he and I agreed that the reason people didn't necessarily smile, oh, the cameras weren't fast enough. That's the other one.
Yes, I heard that.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, that's not true. The cameras were pretty fast. You can find daguerreotypes of people smiling. You can find all kinds of photographs of people smiling. But why didn't they smile? Ask yourself, did they smile in their painted portraits?
Hmm.
No,
No, they didn't.
no. You want to look serious. You want to look respectable. You don't want to be smiling like the fool on the circus poster.
Really. And see now, like now, if now smile, smile.
Right. Now we smile all the time. But, there are photographs of people smiling with bad teeth. There are photographs of people smiling in earlier photographs when cameras were just starting to get fast enough. So yeah, no, it has to do with being serious. You want to be respectable.
And you know what fascinates me about that era too, when you see historical fiction things or something, that the image was upside down.
We'll be right back.
Experience Italy like never before, traveling with a scheduled group or create your own bespoke tour with friends with philitaly.co. Pack your bags and follow Phil. That's www.philitaly.co.
Yeah. Well, what about backwards?
Oh, I didn't know backwards. Backwards
Reverse.
too. No,
Yeah. Before they
really?
had reversing lenses, things are reversed.
I didn't know that.
If you look at early daguerreotypes, those things on silver coated copper plates, right?
Mhm.
Early ones, if you look at them, they're reversed. The words are all reversed.
No kidding. Oh man,
Yeah,
I never realized that.
yeah, 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 yeah. Sort of like what we do when we hold something up to the camera on our computer. Have you ever done that? And
Yeah,
when I
yeah,
try
and it's
to do
reverse. Yeah.
like TikToks and the book covers are reversed, I'm like, well, that's not going to work. But yeah,
Oh, that's fascinating. That's fascinating.
photographs are fascinating. Or, how many images were on a roll of film in the early amateur cameras? How about 100?
Really?
Yeah.
I was going to say 12 because that's what I remember.
No, no, that's a new thing. That's a fairly new thing. There's this wonderful book by this woman. It's called Good Pictures, and she looks at 20th century snapshots and breaks them down by category. And it's fascinating. Like clouds. When does people start photographing clouds and put them in their family albums? Or they photograph the TV for the landing on the moon. It's a wonderful book.
Yeah,
One of my favorites.
and I recall going through things. The Polaroids, that was like a big deal when we were kids. You had to take it out, and I remember I remember my uncle getting one, and the picture didn't set because you had to like
Yes.
rub
Oh
something on
yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Chemicals. Then you went and ate Cheetos with your dirty hands. I had a swinger camera when I was a kid. Remember the swinger?
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
was marketed mostly to teenage girls, and I'd have that thing on my wrist and I'd hit the button. Horrible photographs. And then you'd have this little tube of chemical that you would spread on it for it to, develop. All of those pictures are just black right now. There's nothing
I
left on
I'm
them.
the worst photographer in the world, right? So now I told you about my father who took all these great pictures. Horrible photographer, cut people's feet off, cut the heads off.
Right, 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 right,
It's
right.
terrible. But
And then the other Polaroids, the ones that shoot out of the camera, right? Those ones from the 70s, the SX 70s, whatever. My husband worked for Polaroid for a bit. And I said to him, so how does that actually work? He goes, well, it's layers of chemicals and color, and the camera, mashes them together. And I said, what happens if the development doesn't stop? And he said, sometimes it doesn't. So you really have to copy all of those. All those Polaroids have to be copied, scanned.
yeah, and I remember back then too, them fading over time and all of that. I
Yeah.
I I used to my dad had because he used to do wedding photos. Uh and I see some photos sometimes of like a cousin or something like that. It was a couple of them before when I was a baby, or maybe even before I was born, and I could tell that I could tell that it was my father who took the picture from the pose. But I used to, he had a dark room in my grandmother's house, and I used to go in there and watch him do
Yeah,
the pictures in a dark room, and
it was
uh,
cool, wasn't it?
it was really, really cool. He didn't, once it went to color, he used to send them out. But the black and whites, when he did weddings, he would do them himself. But yeah, because the image, you watch the image, come to life, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. I worked in a dark room. I had a dark room. Yeah. But here's the modern problem. People are still shooting film. You can still get film, and they shoot film, and then the developer, the company developing it, uploads all those images to a website, right? Nobody goes and picks up their prints. They're sitting at Hunt's Camera down the street from me. They have a huge box where all of these prints are sitting. People, they don't need them. They have them digitally. Um,
Yeah.
but
And every once in a while, I'll send out a picture to be printed or something like that,
yeah,
to send it to the drugstore or things like that. But there was something magical in those days about waiting for the photos to
well, and
show up, right?
you could use a spotter and enhance it in different areas. It was all very the technical.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Uh and having grown, I used to see my father's pictures on the paper. So, I'm getting goosebumps saying that because
Yeah.
it was, as a 10-year-old kid, and my father would have the front page of the New York Daily News.
That's the cool thing.
Yeah, and every once in a while we would be in the paper. I'll send you the picture of me in the paper, and uh, uh, I had a little girlfriend, I guess, for lack of a better word, in kindergarten, and my dad took the picture, put it in the
How
paper.
how long was your dad a photographer before he worked for the New York Daily News?
He wasn't. He pretty much self-taught. He
Mm.
became a copy boy at the Daily News. And when the war broke out, he enlisted in the army, and he wanted to be um, a combat photographer. And
Oh,
they told him, well, you have to be a professional photographer to be a combat photographer. But then they said, but the life expectancy, listen to this, for a combat photographer in World War II is 6 months.
yeah.
So they sent them to, we're from New York. They sent them to Fort Monmouth, which I live not far from now, uh, and put him in signal school. But he had a punctured eardrum. So they sent him out. He got, discharged from the army. And because all the photographers were in the service, he became a photographer in 1944. When the war ended and the photographers came back, he was a newsreel movie person for WPIX Channel 11 for several years, and then eventually got back into the news.
Yeah.
But he loved his job. They offered to make him a boss, so he didn't want to be a boss. He just wanted to be on the street.
Yeah, I can imagine that. He was where the action was.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. And my cousin also became my cousin became a photographer. A couple of cousins that from my dad's family, from his sister, they became photographers. Probably, probably because of him.
Mm.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about your website and your podcast. So what do you tell people in the podcast, or what kind of guests do you have? Let's start there.
I get everyone from photo historians to fashion historians to nonfiction writers. Uh, 1 month I did all historical fiction authors, which was fun because I like historical fiction. So I was like, ooh, let me see if I can get interviews with my favorite people. Uh, and what else? Oh, it's whatever. Sometimes I have jewelry experts, I have mourning jewelry experts. This past week, I had a person who wrote a workbook on going to the cemeteries. It's all family history, photography, history related.
I have a great guy. I'll send you his name. He wrote a book about the fashion of the nobility uh, in the Renaissance
Cool.
in Italy. It's fascinating. It's really a super interesting book.
Well,
Uh,
the thing about fashion is it comes back again. My mother always said, wait long enough and the fashion of your youth will come back again. I've lived long enough, Bob. I see it in the stores. I'm like, ooh. And it's like that for generations. Some of the same styles or pattern, maybe not the length of the skirt. And certainly, thank God, the bustle hasn't come back. But although we have those peplums, but patterns and jewelry, hairstyles, all kinds of stuff comes back again and again. And I think it's interesting to see the history behind those things.
yeah, and he goes deep into that about the colors and how only certain colors could be worn by certain people, like the purple
Yes,
and all of that kind of stuff.
yes.
But I'm always intrigued. We'll watch because we like to watch these historical type fiction shows and stuff like that. I'm always fascinated about the hats people wear and like how they convinced everybody to wear this kind of hat.
Well, think about some of the fashion we have, right? In 50 years or 100 years, people will look back and go, wow, could they really have worn those ripped jeans? Why did they do that? Or, I'm a big fan of the Gilded Age because it's the on HBO because it's shot here in Rhode
Yes,
Island,
yes, yeah.
partially, right? So, but I'm very critical of these historical shows because I want to know that they're accurate, and they are. The Gilded Age the hats are just gorgeous. Um, yeah, I
Oh,
mean fashion. I have a couple of books. Let me mention my books.
oh yes, please.
If you have photographs that you want to learn how to take care of, I have Preserving Your Family Photographs, brand new edition, just out in 2023. And it even includes a whole section on photo enhancements and software and websites. Uh, Metadata is covered because, of course, a lot of us have digital images. And then I have Family Photo Detective, which is really the basic guide to looking at your photographs critically and telling their story and dating them and looking at all the details, stuff like that.
So now,
But
so can people send you their photographs and you'll do
yes,
that for them?
yes, I have photo investigations or consultation slots, generally on Wednesdays or Fridays. But if that doesn't work with somebody's schedule, they just have to email me and we'll set up a time. It's pretty easy. I love looking at what people have. I miss the in-person conferences because people used to line up and just bring their stuff to the conference and I'd do them right on the spot. Um, I'm willing to do that virtually at any of these conferences right now, but yeah, anyone can come to me with a photograph or two or an album. Yeah. And I'm not sure when this will be on YouTube, but it'll be on YouTube forever, right, Bob? So I will
Yes.
say in November of 2024, I'm doing Gratitude Month. And so all the consults are going to go on sale. It's a good time
And
to
so,
get
I forgot to ask you, where do you live now?
Providence, Rhode Island.
Oh, yeah. So, and I didn't know that there were so many Italians in Providence until just a few
How could you
years
not
ago.
know that?
Because I come from New York, we thought all the Italians just came from Brooklyn and Queens
No,
and the Bronx.
no. We have a huge number of Italians. A lot of them from the Naples area, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know. Do you know Dr. Ed? You know Chili?
No,
Yeah, he writes a blog about his stories of growing up Italian and all of that kind of stuff. And he's from Providence. Um, but yeah,
I'm
nice
sure.
guy.
I'm
Nice
sure I've
guy.
run into him. Providence
Yeah,
is a a city, but not a big city when you think about it.
yeah, you probably passed him in the drugstore or something like that.
Probably.
But yeah, he's a great guy. And like I said, he kind of writes and he helped me with my book a little bit along with Anthony Riccio because I didn't know where to start. I would absolutely love to write a historical fiction, but building characters is that you have to be able to build the characters, and
But,
that's
but you know how to do that. You're a genealogist.
I don't know.
It's easier than you think. It's definitely easier than you think. I have some writing stuff that I've been doing. Um,
I guess I suppose once you get started, yeah, I guess. So before we go, I want to ask you one more thing.
Sure.
Well, two things. What's the oldest photo that you found, and what was the most interesting one that you found?
Well, the most interesting. There's so many interesting ones, and I have so many in my collections that I buy because they're interesting. Because not everything is in print, so my thousands of photographs that I've collected are my research material. Often, like, do I actually have that collar on a dress? Because it's not, there's no encyclopedia of collars, or maybe there is, and I just don't know it. The oldest photograph I've ever seen. Um, those early daguerreotypes from the very early 1840s. I have one in my collection, and it's a young woman, and she's holding a daguerreotype of an older woman.
Hmm.
Or one of my favorite daguerreotypes that I have is a little baby sitting in a little high chair, and she's doing this with her fingers, tapping her fingers together. I'm like, it's classic. And she's
Yeah.
smiling, and they've colored her dress, so it's like a red dress. It's just wonderful. Um, if you think about paper photographs, and the earliest paper photograph I've seen, certainly I've seen the exhibits on salted paper prints in England. There was an exhibit I went to in Edinburgh, but also at the big shows that used to be in London. I used to go to those, the Who Do You Think You Are live shows, and I'd be in the booth looking at 500 photographs a day. I brought a clicker with me once to count them. And the team of us would look at like literally 500 photographs a day. It was exhausting. And somebody had a really early card photograph, from the mid 1850s, which was kind of cool. It was very
Wow,
cool.
that's nice. Um, Now, do you know Kate Kelly by any chance? Do you know Kate?
I should know Kate Kelly
You
because
should
she
know Kate.
literally lives about 3 miles from me,
Get out of
but
here.
our paths have never crossed. No,
Oh,
literally about 3 miles down the road.
oh, you have to get in touch. She's really a sweetheart. And she does all of this stuff. I don't know how she does it. I don't know how she finds all these photos and collects them and then
Yeah.
returns them to the
Yeah, and then
family.
she returns them. I have not had great luck with that. So, I give her credit for having good success with that. Most of the other people I know that do the returns, it's like a 50-50 thing. You get 100 photographs and you can return 50 of them, or you get 10 and you can return 5. It's harder than it looks, much, much harder.
I'm sure. And she's relentless. I know she's worked on some of them for like long, long time. And then all of a sudden she's, oh, I found it. I found it.
I've got some and I've tried, and they are not going anywhere.
Um,
They're
uh,
part of my collection now.
so thanks again. Why don't you give the names of your books again and the website?
Sure. So my website is maureentaylor.com, and that's Maureen Taylor, Taylor.com. My 2 books are Preserving Your Family Photographs and The Family Photo Detective. They're both available on my website and on Amazon, of course. And my podcast is called The Photo Detective, and it's available everywhere there's podcasts.
Great, super. Well, thanks again. I really, really appreciate it. This has been fascinating. I loved it. This has been
Thank
great.
you. Thank you, Bob.